Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Anne Unsworth. Welcome to you, Anne.
Thank you, Julian. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, really excited to share all my news and my stories with you.
Absolutely, and I've known you for many years, having come from the world of FMCG together, but you're not coming from that perspective. You are now the founding director of Clear Path Success, and you're a certified trainer of NLP and hypnosis and various other things in that world, and you're a practitioner, you're a trainer, and you have spent a number of years in the world of FMCG. And so today we're going to be exploring and tapping into your wisdom and your insight on NLP and how that can help improve workplace communication. But before we go in there, Anne, I'd just like to ask, what do you love about what you do?
What do I love about what I do? That's a great question. So I think I'm passionate about people, Julian. I always have been. People are, I'm really curious about what's making people tick. I love just the fact that we live in such a diverse world of different styles, different people, different behaviours. As you'll well know from our time in the past, like you said, when we were many years ago, both working in FMCG, it's always about people, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, you are always with people, always having to communicate with people. And, for me, I've always found it fascinating, just understanding different people and watching people and just everything that comes with communication. And, I think communication is a word that we throw away. We completely don't appreciate actually how challenging communication can be. And I think it's something that in most instances we do very unconsciously. And sometimes that's with great results. And at other times, as I'm sure everybody who's listening will appreciate, that can actually come with some really quite difficult and, challenging results and not getting what you actually set out and intended to get in the first place. And again, that's in all walks of life. It's not just in any one particular area.
Yeah, and I'm sort of generalizing here, but I think communication is not the root of all issues in organizations, but it certainly has a heavy part to play in lack of things not happening well, or misunderstandings, or things going wrong. It's that communication, whether it's how you communicate, what you communicate, the time in that communication, I think is a real sort of issue. And I know when I work with lots of sort of teams and stuff, communication comes up quite highly in terms of an issue or an area of development, I should say. Be more positive about the scenario.
Yeah, and I think in all of my time in industry and in work, regardless of kind of who our parent company is, who owns us at the time, I think communication has always come up as we're really good at lots of different things. We're great from a product point of view. We're great with the services that we provide. Often where we really let ourselves down is especially within that internal communication. And so much so many issues and tangible impacts on bottom line as well happen through mismatched communication. I've got many an example. I've been on projects that have got a certain timeline attached to them, and those timelines just get extended because a lot of the time it's because of mismatched communication that things get lost in translation, or you're not cutting through the right way to what it is that you're trying to explain to somebody. I've recently been on a project just a couple of years ago, and it was a big project, a 12-month project, and it was actually bringing together operational system from one business into another business's operational system, and I headed that project up. And within the project team, you can imagine the diversity of the people that we had on there. We had sales, we had people from sales, we had people from IT, coders. Those two backgrounds alone are complete opposites in how they communicate. And being able to really have that conversation in a compelling way that the other person is actually going to really understand what it is that you're asking them to do, and also feel really comfortable with how you're asking for it to be done as well. And I think that is so important. From an NLP point of view, we talk a lot about that internal representation and how people feel, and quite often how people feel about the words that we say and the conversations that we have has a direct impact on their performance.
No, totally, I agree. And hence we're having a good conversation about it now, and I think it's will be a valuable episode. I'd like to just go back almost what drew you to getting into the world of NLP, because obviously I knew you many years ago, and I didn't know you had an interest in NLP or even doing NLP, and I'm just curious of what drew you to it and sort of what continues to keep you excited about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So it came about for me as probably more of a need than anything. So outside of my own career, we had a business, a family business, and that was a children's indoor play centre, and that was doing well. My husband was running that business, and unfortunately, it didn't work. It wasn't successful for us, and in 2010, we folded that business, and it left us in a huge amount of debt. And from that, I sort of plunged myself into my career. My husband kind of took on all of the responsibility of dissolving the business, and that came with a huge amount of pressure as well. And he really struggled with his mental health. We made the decision not to go bankrupt, so we had a massive amount of debt that we then had to repay, which we spent many years doing. And the reason that I got into NLP was actually through going to a PT, so going to a personal trainer. My way of coping with everything was throw myself into work and throw myself into exercise. And it was actually through my PT that they sort of said, look, maybe it's worth you talking to a person, that is also comes and exercises with us, and they know NLP, and it might be something that you'd want to explore. At the time, Julian, I had no idea what NLP was. I was like, had to go and look it up. Don't know what it is. And from there, at first, it was like, I'm going to have a bit of coaching for myself to help me kind of, get through. And actually, further conversation coming from the commercial background that I have, it was a case of you can have a little bit of counselling, a bit of coaching yourself, or for not too much more, why don't you come on to an 8-day NLP practitioner course and actually become a practitioner of NLP? And that's what I did. That's the path that I chose. And that was back in 2019 that I started doing some pre-study and started learning a bit more about NLP. And then I went on to the 8-day course to become a certified practitioner of NLP with the ABNLP, which is the American Board of Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I entered that course on the 14th of March 2020, and the world was normal. And we came out 8 days later. So I think we were about 5 or 6 days away from being locked down with COVID. Yeah. So I'll never ever forget those dates. We were kind of like almost watching the world around us change rapidly. Yes. Whilst we were on that course. And it's very true to say that you come onto an 8-day practitioner course and you are in an NLP bubble. You kind of leave the outside world behind you whilst you're doing that training, and it's quite an intensive training. And do you know what? It left me really, really perfectly equipped to actually come out, as we were moving into COVID and the world was changing very rapidly, to really seeing and being able to put into practice all of the great things that I'd learned, not only on that 8 days, but doing all of the pre-study and everything before. And I think the bit for me then that, again, was fortuitous was, all of us had to stay at home. We weren't able to go anywhere. So my commute had been quite a big commute. I would often be spending probably 6 to 8 hours of my working week sat in a car commuting. So I chose to use that time to then continue with my studies with NLP. And 12 months later, in the April of 2021, I then became a master practitioner. And again, even at that point, I was just fascinated with the subject and I knew and could feel the real tangible benefits for myself, taking it back into the workplace. So again, for me, just in terms of, you know, being an account manager within the business, how I could strengthen my relationships with customers, how I could strengthen my communication internally with our own business. You know, when you're negotiating, understanding how to negotiate, you know, with much more, you know, intention and volition, that allows you to probably not have to concede quite so much in those negotiations. And I could really see the benefit of it from a business perspective. So I carried on, and I came out of master practitioner, and I had the opportunity at that point to say, you know, there was going to be a training course to become a trainer of NLP, and that was going to be in Greece, in Evia, which was in the September of 2021. And because I was now one of these people that NLP massively builds your awareness and presents lots of opportunities, I jumped on the back end of that, Julian, and spent 10 hours of traveling to get from Manchester to Athens, unlike the 4-hour flight that it is these days. I had to sort of go out via Schiphol, and yeah, it was a real challenge to actually get out there in the first place. And I think that in itself was whole reason to kind of be doing what I was doing, because NLP does not stop you from doing what you want to do, you know, regardless of what the challenges are that are in front of you. So I came back, I did that course. That was 3 weeks, and it was the most scary, amazing roller coaster of emotional, you know, that you can imagine. It was really, really intense training, and absolutely loved it, and came back, and then really started, you know, continuing within the workplace, but also then started to talk to people outside of business, you know, whether it be one-to-one coaching or then starting to look at my own trainings. And that's led us to where we are today, Julian.
It's a great story, and I love how it came out of almost an adversity in your life that started to make you think about it, and this sort of popped in, and how some of fortuitous people come along in your path and suggest things, and you know, and you're obviously open-minded, which is obviously you took NLP, what's that, and explored it, and then you took a step on it, and then you continue to get more involved and excited about it. For those who've never heard of NLP, they might have just heard the word or the acronym NLP. Can you give give an explanation of what it is, and explain why it matters in everyday sort of communication? And perhaps, I don't know, throw in some examples of that would be really helpful for the audience to hear that, so they can sort of get themselves in the sense of, oh, I know what NLP is now.
Yeah, sure. So NLP, in a nutshell, it's the art and science of communication. And it's what people do in their head to build success. And also NLP is about modeling experts. So you model people who are already very successful at what they do, and then you install how they do that into yourself. So where it's really, really good is about, you know, we all have our self-talk. It all starts with our own internal representation. You know, every single one of us, I'm sure, you know, who are listening to this can think, yeah, one side of my shoulder is telling me to do this, the other side is telling me to do something else, or we've got lots of chat going on, lots of conversation that we're having in our heads. Now, if that is really positive and that's really working for you, then absolutely fantastic. Carry on doing what you're doing. For many people, it's unresourceful. It's where we really hold all of our beliefs. It stops people from doing what they do, what they want to do, because they either believe that they can't do it, or they limit their decisions and their opportunities to be able to do things. And also I talked about awareness. So most people live their lives, you know, in very foveal vision, kind of very narrow-minded. I think especially even more so, you know, in today's society, where how many people, when you walk down the high street, you just see with their head in their phone. They're not taking the world in that's around them. They are just literally
anywhere you see people sitting all together are all on the phones now, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I'm part of that as well. I do exactly the same in some ways.
Yeah, but how much of your life do you actually miss by doing that? And that's what I was saying about, opportunities present themselves. It's not that opportunities are suddenly there that weren't there. It's just that those opportunities were always there. It's that you can now actually grasp them and become aware of the fact that they're actually there. So we all have what is called our model of the world, our version of reality. And for you and me, Julian, we're sitting here in the same event. We're interacting together on this podcast, and your experience and my experience, although they're going to be similar, are not going to be exact. We're going to be coming at it from a slightly different place. And from a communication model point of view with NLP, we have an event such as this. We have 12 million bits of information per second going through all around us, and we take that in through our five senses, which is our vision, so our hearing, which is auditory, kinesthetically through what we feel, olfactory, which is what we smell, and then gustatory through our taste. So our five senses are on, or you being used all the time. We can't possibly be able to that 12 million bits of information per second. I mean, blimey, some of the biggest quantum computers probably wouldn't be able to cope with that. So we delete, we distort, and we generalize information. And in order to then make our world a reality, we take that and we just hold 126 bits of those 12 million is what we can actually cope with in a second. And then from there, what we do is we create pictures in our mind, we create our sounds, and then to make our reality, to make our world correct for us, that's when we put language to it and we put words to it. So again, through the very first part of communication is what words am I putting to what I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling. And then that manifests itself then through our behavior.
Wow, that's a wonderful, clear explanation of what NLP is and the power of it. And it's that I think sometimes the realization, and it sounds obvious when you hear it, that my reality is different to your reality, even in the same, if we were sitting together, it's a different reality. I've got a different perspective, you've got a different perspective, different experiences, my brain's doing different things, I've got different beliefs. How can just getting the understanding of that help you in the context of communication in the workplace?
So how that can really, really help you is once you understand how we communicate, how we think, and how our reality of our world is actually created, then you get a much better understanding of somebody else's world. And then actually, especially if you want to communicate with them and you want to communicate with them really effectively and build rapid rapport with them and have to be able to have that really good, strong connection, then what you want to be able to do is be able to almost gain a little bit of insight into their model of the world. And we do that through picking up the words that they use. So again, the words that people use give us clues as to how their model is created. And then we will also, we'll match and mirror as well. So again, using body language, we will use all of our senses to be able to make that connection. And I think one of the things that people probably don't realize and don't recognize is that 100% of our communication, only 7% of our communication is actually through the words that we use. 55% comes from our body language, 38% comes from our tone and how we say something. So again, those 7% of words where I think most people will probably in the first instance think, oh yeah, but we talk, we communicate. Actually, that's a really, really small part. So one thing that we do teach, especially within the workplace, is very much coming at it from using your words with purpose and intention to get the results that you want.
Interesting is that you say 7% is through words, as in the words you say, and just shows that you think about email, you think about text, where you don't get tone, you don't get body language, and how miscommunication so go wrong.
Yeah.
And almost think you can say something and you go, I didn't mean it that way, I meant it, but you can't say that in a text. It's just the words, isn't it? And how it's interesting, isn't it?
And how many times will you have done it yourself, Julian? I know I've done it. You read an email how you want to read it.
Yes.
That might not be how it was intended in the first place. and how we read everything in that moment will be very much how we're feeling. So again, if you're coming, if somebody's really frustrated you, or an internal communication's not landed well with you, you will read that in a way that suits you. That's not necessarily how it was intended in the first place. And that's what then leads to a lot of conflict and a lot of internal friction, especially within business and within teams. And obviously, once you have that, then you talk about lost productivity. Then it's about being able to cut through all of that, identifying where people, teams, individuals, collectives have got any cause of friction or any of that misaligned communication, and then how do we be able to bring that into a position where people feel empowered. They feel empowered and they feel confident to be able to say it as it is, say what needs to be said, and be able to say it in a way that delivers the message that they want. And also, and this is the important bit, is that it can be received by the other person in a way that is actually comfortable for them as well. So that then that actually starts to alleviate that friction, so that you can then really build strength as you move forward.
Now, a lot of people do the body language and everything else in terms of communication. Obviously, some people have been on various courses that helped them with all that. And there's a lot of unconsciousness here. But is this about being more conscious, more aware? Talk about being intentional, and just talk us through how you might help a leader in terms of helping them to be more intentional, how they might communicate. What sort of things do you need to think about? What sort of things do you need to do? Any techniques? Any prep before communication, that type of thing?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is it really starts with get to know your people. So if you know your people really, really well, and it sounds like a cliche, doesn't it? It sounds like the easiest thing in the world to do, Julian. But as leaders, when you're really, really busy, you've got the pressures of everything that's going on at work, we become really complacent in terms of what we actually need, and not thinking about actually what I'm asking for from my team. What do my team need in order for me to be able to receive that? And that's really important. And I think, you want to be able to recognize clues in people. So again, if you've got people who suddenly, their communication just stops, or they're very rigid in what they might say to you, or they go very, very quiet. As leaders, we should pick up on all of these clues to say something is going on with that individual. I don't know what. We're not mind readers, and that's one thing we're not in NLP. We're not about mind reading. It's about picking up on clues that something is going on in that person's model of the world. And what is it that's going on in that person's model of the world?
So is this actively looking, obviously as you interact with the team, just looking for things that might be understanding what's going on in the world in terms of whether they go quiet, or they're just low energy, that type of thing?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's looking out for any changes in people that are uncharacteristic, and picking up on that, and then actually being comfortable to be able to do something with that. So again, if you're a manager and you're having one-to-ones, quite often as leaders, we will go, and I've done it many, many times myself, Julian, I'm sure you have when you were back in FMCG. We've got pitches that we've got to do. We've got sales that we've got to, deliver. We've got, all of this stuff going on that's really practical stuff. And actually, in order for all of that to be delivered really, really well, we need to know that, the place that the individual is coming from in order to be able to deliver all of that is in a good place, and that they have got their understanding in the right place, and that they're feeling confident about what it is that they're doing. They feel that they can speak up and be supported if they need to. And as leaders, it's our job to be able to pick up on all of that and recognize that not everybody will feel that they can just have the conversation easily in the way that I would imagine you and I would be able to, given some of the positions that we've been in.
And you talk about understanding people, getting to know people, but we're talking about getting to know like their mental models, I guess, and how. Yeah. So how might you, and again, give me an example? Perhaps you've worked with somebody, and how did you understand their world, and what sort of to help you communicate effectively back to them?
Yeah, sure. So one of my roles that I've done previously was working within our journey planning department. And look, I'm quite a big strategic thinker. You know, I am a visionary person. I'm not down in the detail naturally. And you know, and that my team that I was working with, understandably, given the role and the job that they were doing, are very, very detailed people. And I was working with one particular individual, and hugely intelligent, you know, probably much more so than I ever could be, in terms of how she would be able to pull the plans together and the intricacy of the detail that she could go into. And, you know, she would spend hours and hours and hours pulling very, you know, detailed plans together. And that was where, you know, she'd be really, really comfortable in that world. And then we were bought from an organization. We had an acquisition, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like, now I want you to go and, you know, stand in front of some leaders in the business and articulate your day-to-day job just in a conversation, just similarly to how you and I are, Julian, and be able to do it at a top level, you know. So come out of the detail and elevate yourself, so that you kind of deliver it in the key heights. And she really struggled, really struggled, didn't know how to come and lift herself out of that detail. And so again, just by me really working with her, working closely with her, picking up on her language, and then actually we used one of the techniques, which is the hierarchy of ideas, which again is where you can elevate people into more strategic thinking, into more ambiguous thinking, and pull them out of that detail. And then by giving her the tools to enable her to, you know, be comfortable being much more, you know, abstract and ambiguous in her language, she was then able to go away and practice. And then when it came to delivering, you know, her 5 minutes, she did an absolutely fantastic job. Whereas previously, when we first started all of this, she was like, I can't do it. I can't go and
Well, I suppose you're saying there,
I can't do it in a pitch.
her mental model is obviously very detailed and very specific, and that's how she worked, and that's why she was good at what she did. But when you have to then communicate to other people who don't understand your world, all that detail, is she had to then do a little bit of a shift, I guess, in terms of her. And talk me through that hierarchy of ideas, how that works, because and then sharing any other tools that might help people to sort of navigate that as well.
The hierarchy ideas is brilliant, especially for leaders. So I think, you know, like I said, and it was perfect for me. So I've got many of my own examples, Julian. So, you know, I am that abstract thinker. I am strategy. I kind of like love that big picture stuff. And then, you know, being in the detail, I used to find really tedious. I used to find it overwhelming. I was kind of like, my brain just can't kind of stay and work in there. And I think as a leader, it's fair to say that to be a really, really good leader, you need to be able to, you know, flex and go up and down and stay out of the detail as much as you can. And also know enough detail to come across as, you know, authentic as well. Because I think, you know, there are leaders that are out there who kind of go, well, we leave the detail to everybody else. And then how does that make the people feel who are doing the detail when they're like, well, they're not even interested in what I'm doing? And that's how it can come across and can feel to them. So the hierarchy of ideas is all about logical levels and moving through logical levels to more abstract thinking. And it's also the domain of, you know, the problem solver as well. So again, quite often, if you want to problem solve, you need to come out of the detail, elevate yourself into a level that's slightly higher, and then come back down again. So if I gave you an example of let's say cars, let's say we've got cars as our starting place. So we'd go, well, okay, what's a logical level above cars? Well, that might be transportation. Okay. And then if we were going to go and transportation, what's a logical level above that? And that might be movement. So you can see how we're kind of moving up. Then if we go back to cars and we kind of go, right, okay, so what specifically about a car? Now we're going to go into the detail. Well, it might be, okay, well, specifically about that car, it might be a BMW. Okay, so we talk what sort of BMW, what specifically about BMW? Oh, well, it might be, an M Sport. Okay, and what specifically about the M Sport? And then you might go into engine size, and you see how you're coming down the layers and you're getting. So then when you start talking about, logical, being able to think laterally, then again, we'll start at cars, and then we're going to go, okay, so we've gone cars. So now what? You go up. So we go, right, we're going to talk about transportation. Okay, so I've gone up a logical level. And then I'm going to come back down again. So I'm now going to go laterally. Okay, so what are other modes of transportation? Well, I've got cars, I've got boats, I've got buses, I've got lorries, I've got trains, I've got aeroplanes. So it brings you into a much more lateral way of thinking. And if you apply that very simple example into real life situations, then it actually gives you options and choices, especially when you start looking at, how to problem solve. It's a really good place, a starting point. It gives you a framework to start from.
I guess it's creating a different perspective looking here, aren't we? By you shifting up or down, you're having a different angle on it, which helps you then think, oh, I've seen something different now because I've got this angle on it.
Yeah. And also, if you can imagine you're doing that with a team of people and a team of people who have all got their own model of reality, and and the more diverse those thinkers are and those people are in that group, the better it's going to be in terms of coming up with the solutions that you want to. And again, from a team perspective, if then everybody understands how to communicate effectively with their opposite, for example, then that communication is going to be so much more compelling for them.
And just, I suppose, as a final thing, really, just to think about if you're communicating to a group or group of people, well, that's 10 people, 20 people. Obviously, you may not know their mental models, you may have but you can't obviously assess all that. And how do you, I suppose, package your communication that'll be quite effective in that context without tying yourself in knots, trying to be all things to all people type of thing?
Yeah, and that's when you do want to get a little bit more ambiguous with what you're actually saying. So as humans, if we're left hanging with something, we want to put our own ending to it. So again, we use what we call Milton model language. And, when we want to communicate with a large audience of people, we will give messages that will be very generalized and then ambiguous enough so that allows somebody to put their own interpretation on the meaning that sits behind it. Politicians, and I'm not going to get into politics here, Julian, politicians are absolutely brilliant at it.
Oh, really?
When they're campaigning, for different things. So, Barack Obama was a great example. And, his strapline was, and we can. Well, and we can what? So do you know what I mean? If he was talking to a mum, you might be going, okay, so for me, it's about, and you can deliver great education. If it was somebody who was, not well at the time, it'd be, and you can deliver great healthcare. Maybe as leaders in big organizations, it will be, and you can ensure we have an economy that's going to be able to make sure that business thrives. So can you see how just using words
that's interesting.
Can suddenly become, really compelling for everybody by you filling in how you want it to be represented for you.
So almost on a bigger scale, then you become a bit more ambiguous as opposed to specific. So allowing people to fill the gaps in, basically.
Yeah, and again, it's like if you think about it in the workplace. So think about how many organisations have you worked in where you've got mission statements, you've got the vision, and then you've got that cascades down. And I think this is where businesses could really, really look hard. And I've been in situations myself, Julie, and I remember sitting around lots of different hotel rooms on away days, and we've kind of gone, what's our mission, what's our vision, and we've come up with 4 words. We've done it in tactical solutions, our value statements, and that's great. And we all know what that means because we've all sat in a room for 2 days debating it and having the conversation. And then you go and launch it and you put it out into the workforce. And how quickly, do you see things kind of go, yeah, okay, well, yeah, they've given us that, but I don't know what it means to me. What am I meant to do with that? So unless you actually can then go through the hierarchy of ideas and give that explanation of, well, what does that mean to, you know, even the cleaner in the business, what does that mean to them? What does that mean to the person sitting in the journey planning team? What does that mean to the salesman? What does that mean to, you know, the directors and the chairman and everybody in the organization? You have to be able to, you know, deliver that message in a way that's succinct, that it's clear, and it gives direction, yet you are able to appeal to everybody and all the different, you know, personality types.
And it is hard. I mean, I do lots of stuff with organizations on vision and mission statements, because they can be quite powerful. If they're done well, they can be really, as long as they're not just a paint on the walls and all that, they're used, they've got to be used. But I always say, you know, you have to, you know, break it down, because there's usually 3 or 4 components to a statement. And then almost when you deliver it or share it, you almost put a story behind it or an example behind it. So people can sort of articulate, okay, that's what that means. It might not be completely their world, but it gives a sense in that context of the organization what it might mean to them. And obviously, if you're then presented to a specific group in the organization, you then give examples that relate to them, obviously. And I find that can be really quite a powerful way to take the simplistic of words and then make it really powerful by expanding a bit more with the conversation with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of, you know, we nicely wrap that round with an as if statement as well. So as if you're actually doing it and you're in it, and then it becomes you, because what we want people to do is take it on board and have it installed at the unconscious level. That becomes a habit. It becomes a culture. It's a part of what you do as an organization.
Yeah, brilliant. I've loved this conversation, Anne, and could have more conversation about this, and I'm sure we will in time. It's good to reconnect with you.
Surface.
Yes, we have, and we don't want to unload your whole what you do as a trainer, because that's not the point. But I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I thank you for the insights. And hopefully, people have got some helpful tips there and piqued their interest about NLP, and might be interested in a bit more what you do. So if people want to connect with you, get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, so the usual kind of social media platforms. I am Clear Path Success, so you can see that behind you. Come visit my my website's not quite ready. I'm in the process of having it updated at the moment, so probably at the moment get in contact and get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time under myself, Anne Unsworth, and also Clear Path Success.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time today, Anne.
You're very, very welcome. And thank you for having me, Julian. I've really enjoyed it.